Hey, welcome back to the Artie Lange Show, a special night. Sitting to my right, a man, if it wasn't for him, there would be no me. At least, you know, show business-wise, really. I'd be working construction, I hope.
I had no idea I was responsible.
Doing something. Well, you and the Howard Stern Show, yeah, and what you created over there. It's so funny. People compare us on that show a lot just because I sat in that same chair, but it was such a different experience. By the time I got there, it was the biggest radio show of all time. I mean, like as big as, not even just radio, just an entertainment program.
You stepped onto a moving train.
Well, yeah, pretty much. And people don't realize this. We never even overlapped. You left. When you left, I was still doing a sitcom in L.A., and I remember it was such, in the comedy world, it was such a big piece of news. I was working with Norm Macdonald on a sitcom, and one of the writers came in and said, hey, you know, Jackie the Joke Man left Howard, and this was like in February of '01.
So you guys crashed together going through the door to come...
Well, no, and people, like in the stand-up comedy world, you know, Howard said, look, there's an open job here, and everybody, of course, I mean, God, for the plugs alone.
Oh, they thought I was crazy. Because, you know, here you are, a comedian sleeping in your own bed every night and making a fortune. But
right.
I don't have to tell you, it's a tough gig.
The
gig isn't tough.
It's tough to do stand-up and that show at the same time. And I made the classic mistake that I promised myself I wouldn't. I got addicted to the money on the road, and like an idiot, I overextended myself, and it just could not do anything else but spiral out of control.
Well, you know, if they called, I went because I knew that, you know, here I am in Detroit, and I'm making for the show in Detroit 10 times what I'm going to make if I'm ever off that show.
Right,
because it's all about the plugs and the whole thing.
Sure,
so you're working. So you work all week, then you go away, then you work all week. I mean, it's like an endless cycle.
And traveling, I think Howard's starting to see it a little bit now with America's Got Talent. And I'm glad he is, because he deserves to see it. Like, we would do the road, and you know, Howard stays in New York all the time. He never saw, like, I'm sure he knew obviously how big the show was, but to actually see a crowd in St. Louis, Seattle, go so crazy for references to the Howard Stern Show. Like, I'm glad he's finally getting a chance to see now firsthand what he really created.
They're all so tuned in.
Yeah, I mean, like, they people in Seattle, it's a show in New York City, no references like crazy. You could tell they listened to all 4 hours of it, and we would go out and see that kind of nuttiness, and it's like rock star type stuff, and then come back to New York. But when you left the show, what was it? A combination of being burnt out? Was it money? Was it?
You know, it's so funny, and I say the same thing in every interview. I could not make myself take a nap.
Right.
I could not come home.
It's hard for me.
I would get all crazed up,
and
coffee, and we'd have the greatest show, and then I'd drive home and crash from the coffee, but I'd be exhausted. But I'd sit at my stupid computer.
Right.
Instead of going in and taking a doggone nap. So it just had me crazy, but then so I figured, well, you know what, I'll ask for a bunch more money, and if I get that, maybe I'll be smart enough to take a nap. But then I agreed to come back for the money anyway. So, you know, I was so drunk and crazy and mixed up.
That's something else. Like, you know, obviously you handled it way better than I did, but did substance come in? Did substance abuse come into your decision at all?
Well, I knew I would never, ever quit drinking. I knew that I had to get divorced. There were a lot of little things going on.
A lot of personal stuff that was nuts.
That you can't really put your finger on it, you know, but the funniest thing about the whole thing is here it is like 12 years later, and I'm 65 years old, all I want to do is take a nap. And somebody told me, we're going to pay you a lot of money, but the caveat is you got to take a nap every day. And I'm like, oh my God, you know.
Right, I mean, it's a great gig. Like, I tell people the only part that remotely felt like work to me was getting up early. Everything else was like being a kid, and
no matter how tired I was, like there were nights where I got an hour.
Right.
But I'd go in there and drink a cup of coffee, and boom, we're off to the races.
Do you think you could have handled it better without? Do you think you had a drinking problem?
You know what? I don't know, because I didn't drink every night.
Right.
You know what I mean? I drank like, you know, I used to say that, you know, I don't drink every night. You know, I don't wake up and shake and need alcohol or need vodka, you know.
Right.
But you know, they used to say, yeah, you drink plenty. You know, you make up for it. Because once I start the engine going, you know. But you know, I quit when I quit drinking. I didn't have to go through anything like withdrawals or anything. And people say, "Oh, you didn't have a problem."
So you didn't go to like DTs, nothing like that, right?
No, I just stopped. One day I stopped.
Well, for me, it was for me. Like again, people say to me, "Like you screwed up." I was there 8.5 years, and me, I'm a commitment phobe. To do anything for 8.5 years is extraordinary for someone like me. And but the job was so much fun and so cool that I was able to do it. And people say it seems like you screwed up the best job ever. And what I point to is you're right. But
in your mind, you made it so much further.
Well, yeah, I know. Like especially for a comic, like a lot of my comedian friends said, it's the greatest job ever. God bless. I give you 2 weeks. They gave me 2 weeks. So,
I think Richard Belzer lasted like a month.
Yeah, right.
You know, a million years ago, NBC or something like that.
I know. The combination of the morning and then becoming nocturnal, I screwed up. I took too many gigs on the road, and I set up myself to where I was a much worse addict than you and a lot of people, obviously. But I set it up.
Well, what you're really addicted to is how crazy the people go for you.
Yeah.
I mean, they're going crazy for Howard, but they, by
proxy,
design,
right? Yeah, you do get addicted to that love you get from the audience, and it's great to be a part of something that big. It's so much fun.
Let me tell you, a watershed. The guys are here from the E Channel. A watershed moment. You always have moments where the light bulb goes off.
Right.
And we had just started on E, maybe 6 months or a year or whatever. And I went on vacation with my wife to New Orleans, okay?
Right.
And we went there, and we're on Bourbon Street, and we went upstairs in one of those little restaurants, and we're sitting at a wrought iron, thing, sitting ready to order dinner.
Right.
And the waiter comes over and absolutely nonchalantly, doesn't just say hello to me, he says, "Hi, Jackie. Hi, Nancy." Like we were his next door neighbors. I said, "Wow,
it's weird.
This is New Orleans in the middle of nowhere,
right.
And this guy, he's my best friend."
What Howard did, what all you guys did, you, Robin, Freddie, Gar, all those guys there from the beginning.
That sounded very intimate, Freddie. I don't know if I ever called Norris Fraley.
Really? I used to call him that all the time. That might be a Jersey thing. I put E at the end of it.
Yeah, I do it too.
I know. I marveled at Fred every day, what he would do. But you guys, like, the radio thing is a real intimate thing. Radio fans feel like they're your friend. But usually it's local. What you guys did was you created a thing where it's all over the North America. You could be like in San Francisco and people go, "Oh, did you pay that parking ticket you got in Chicago?"
You never get used to it. I'll tell you, I used to be on the way home on the Grand Central in traffic, at 1 o'clock in the afternoon in the summer or something, and people wouldn't say, "Yo, are you Jackie?" or "Hey, are you from the Howard Stern Show?" Like a guy'd look over and go, "So she had nice boobs or what?" No, yeah, she was. I mean, the intimacy, like he had been in the room.
No, I used to love that, getting out of the show, walking down 6th Avenue, and a UPS guy asking, like, was that chick's cans real or whatever? Did you have any anger? Like, was there anger immediately following? It could be anger at the show, at yourself.
No,
at the radio business, at life.
It was really a case of I made my bed and I had to lie in it.
Right.
You know what I mean? When I called and said, "Listen, I'll take the deal," it was on the table, and they didn't call back. I was like, they could have at least called back and said no, but they never do that. They never call you and say you didn't get the audition.
Show business is not like that. No,
so,
you at that point, it's a done deal.
But there was no anger. I did it. I knew, you can't do that unless you're ready to lose the gig.
Right.
I full well knew. I was. What do you mean I'm not?
Do you think that if they immediately had met your request for money, you'd still be there today? Like, you think there's a chance, like, you could have went through the whole thing and said, or with the other things?
That's such a great question, because that was, like, I think the 4th time.
Right.
Okay, so. And after like the 3rd time or the 4th, I don't know which, and you'd think I would know, after we went through it, Howard said, "Listen, we ain't ever doing that again."
Yeah,
and then when we did
stressful,
it again,
right? Yeah.
But it was crazy, But I'll tell you the truth, if I hadn't have gone to the mats each time,
right,
my salary would have never got.
Right, so you're happy you did it for a couple of times with it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Sometimes the magic works, sometimes it's so funny. A friend of mine. A fellow friar, said he was listening to Best Of, and he heard the last day that I was on with Howard, the day before, the second to last day on terrestrial, and they invited me in. I was nervous. I didn't know what they're going to do to me. It wound up being maybe the greatest fun I ever had
Right.
for an hour. I mean, I sat there and Gary came and sat down and I looked over at Howard and he just cracked up because he knew that I was looking at Gary's teeth and it was like 15 years of history. But Fred said to me, Jackie, you know, you're such a hypocrite because, you know, you walked out and then 2 months later, you know, you said you would come back.
Yeah.
And I guess I said to him, a girl's allowed to change her mind. just a great
No, listen. I'm so grateful to DirecTV. The people there are unbelievable. They've given me a great thing here. This is extraordinary. It's like a dream come true.
I'm so jealous I can't stand it. It's
But I got to tell you, man, that's how good the Stern Show was. If I screwed it up because of my drug addiction. It ruined that job. But my dream, of course, my dream situation would I'd still be with the guys hanging out on the Howard Stern Show. Like that's the dream job. You know?
People ask what you miss, and what I probably didn't realize because I'd never been off long enough. Of course, you miss the money and the fame, and blah blah blah. You know that was all so great. But what is really surreal about that is laughing for 4 or 5 hours a day, 5 days.
And you're
that
at
is
work.
not a normal situation.
Right, and you're at work. You're laughing at work.
The average person maybe goes to the bar and hangs out with a few guys and has a few laughs. We would sit there and you know, I would laughing at everything, but because I was totally entertained.
Right.
We would laugh and laugh and laugh, and it's like you didn't realize how crazy and high and
how unique and special a thing. Yeah, when you're in something like that, you get involved in the whirlwind. But like I say this. It's funny, Jack. I say the same exact thing. I miss laughing, and we have a lot of fun here too. But like on that show, man, we would be laughing.
Yeah, and
like
then
red face type laugh.
Right, and they're picking on you, and then you're trying to reflect it over to Gary, and Gary tries to reflect it to here. And,
right.
Oh,
and you're at work. It's the greatest thing.